All right. Well, today is a very special day. I am super excited and honored to be here with Sandy Ball, Chief People Officer of Aspida. Thank you so much, Sandy, for taking some time out of your busy day.
Oh, absolutely. Excited to be here.
So this is going to be a fun, but also an important conversation around sustainable high performance during periods of growth. And we talked about it before we started recording that this is, of course, the topic that I, of course, geek out on, near and dear to my heart, but also vital for companies that are really growing like yours. So before we jump into it, though, I thought I would ask a little bit about you. Was there a person or people or a situation that really inspired you to care so deeply about your people and to really reach this top level in your career?
Yeah, so I mean, when you think about it, everything goes back to your childhood, right? So when I think about like why I have such passion around development and growth, it really stems from my parents. Um, I was an athlete growing up, and I think they were so supportive of me as coaches, as mentors. And then neither of them went to college. So when it came to the corporate coaching and, mentoring, they didn't really have career jobs, right? They had jobs, but not necessarily, I'd say, careers. So I didn't have that coaching or mentoring or here's how you navigate the workplace or here's how you develop yourself. I didn't really get that from home, right? From my parents. So when I got into the corporate world, I had to figure that out myself. And I think I spent a lot of time and was very intentional about really observing and watching, like who speaks in meetings, what are the dynamics in meetings, who influences, who's not listened to, who rises in their career and why, who fails, and really really paying attention to that and learning from that. And I think that's how I ended up figuring out how to do things. But it was slower, right? I would have loved to have someone that goes, here's what you look out for. I always say to my kids, like, learn your mistakes vicariously, like, learn from other people. And I feel like had I had that probably earlier in my career, my assimilation would have been faster. Um, but I think that's where my passion for developing people came from because I feel like now, right, in all my years, I
Mhm.
can help people do that. And so I think that's just my passion came from having to do something myself. And now I want to help people be able to do that faster.
Mhm. Oh, I love that so much. So it seems like you were like a real student. I was going to say a student of your circumstance, but not really, because if you were a student of your circumstance, maybe probably you wouldn't have aspired to be a chief people officer because that wasn't really modeled for you. So it seems like you're more of a student of what's possible and then, self-taught along the way.
Yeah, like I think, I grew up where your parents are like, you're like it's funny because it's so different from now. Like it's not that they say you're not that special, right? Like that's not the case, but it's, a different generation where they're like, do your best. But, my mom's kind of thing in high school was, maybe you should take shorthand because you'll always have something to fall back on, right? So it wasn't this like, oh, you're just gonna be the greatest thing. And one way she wasn't supportive, so please don't get me wrong on that. But I didn't have that like you're gonna rise to some, chief people officer at Aspida, and so I think I kind of figured navigated that myself. And so I think that again, that's where it's like, okay, let me help people do this because it was a longer road for me.
Yeah, I love that. And something that I heard actually just maybe 5 years ago was, if you're a coach, and I mean, obviously you're a leader, but, in a way that you're a coach to shorten down things, just like as coaches, we go spend hundreds of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars so we can condense it all. And a coach is really to move someone from one place to the other in a really efficient way. So it sounds like that's really, you might be wearing a coaching hat as well, in addition to your amazing role at Aspida.
Well,
So,
and I think I was just going to say, one of the things, just kind of even outside of work is during COVID, my kids and their friends were kind of entering into their first jobs. And so I recognized that they call Mrs. Ball, can you help me with my resume? Can you I have an interview, like what should I be thinking about? And I really realized they weren't getting this from their career planning placement or wherever. And so I started just this little video series called Spark, right? And it started off as like, okay, well, maybe I can help people with interviewing, or I can help people with like how to ask for a raise. And it really like morphed into things like imposter syndrome and perfectionism and influence, only because my target audience originally was really just the younger generation. And the feedback that I was getting was people my age going, oh my gosh, that was so helpful. And so I just think there's this gap, for people. So love that I'm able to kind of help with that, even at any stage in your career. So,
yeah, I feel like we can always learn, just with after working with athletes and Olympians, even like Olympians are still learning. So,
right.
we're always learning and getting better. So I love that so much. So switching gears a little bit, you know, I would imagine that you've been the only in the room, or I would imagine that, your journey hasn't been all unicorns and rainbows and super easy, going from maybe point A to point B, or when you started your career all the way up to being a chief people officer. So, what has been the mindset that's allowed you to keep going and to persevere?
I think my mindset has always been just growth mindset. And I want to differentiate that from like promotion mindset. Like
Mhm.
when I say growth, it's really like looking at growth as like or new experiences as exposure, or a challenge as an opportunity, or feedback as a gift, right? Not as what's the next title or what's the next thing I can get to. So really trying to look at every opportunity I have and just jump at it. Like one of the things I always say to the employees here when I teach different classes is like the red car theory. If you look at opportunities, if I we're going to pay you $1 million to
Mhm.
tell you how many red cars there were on your way to work today, you probably couldn't tell me. But if tomorrow I said to you, hey, count how many red cars there is, you'd be very intentional to look for the red cars to get the $1 million. I think about that as like opportunity, because opportunities all around you, but you're probably not paying attention to it as much, because
Mhm.
you have this focus on like, oh, I just need that new title, or that's going to get me to this title, to this title. I think you miss out on the whole growth mindset. And so for me, I really just tried to maintain that through my career. And regardless of where I was or what level I was at, like what is new? What opportunity have I not had? What person have I not worked with? And just thought about it differently.
Yeah, I love that so much. I was just listening to Oprah interviewed Michael Beckwith, and that really reminded me of that, because he was talking about the difference between visualization and visioning. And so of course, teach visualization. It's an advanced tool, that Olympians use to think about what you want in detail. But visioning is a little bit more like what you were talking about, and that's just being open to receive what's meant for you, just being open to receive the gifts that are in the world to kind of match up what's been placed within you. So just being open, and if you do what you were saying consistently, that's kind of, and take action, that's when the magic happens. So I love that you brought that up. And so let's talk a minute about, high performing teams. I like to say sustainable high performing teams during periods of growth, because it's not just a matter of getting across the finish line, to make earnings and having everybody collapse. And that's really what high performance is, right? It's a way that we can be high performing, get the job done, but not flame out or burn out in the process. So I guess my first question is, why is this so important? And, do you have any tips or tools on how to achieve that?
Um, I think as we have built the culture at Aspida, I think one of the things that we really focus on is connection between people. And I think that feeds really well into teams. So connection could be fun things, engagement things we do in the office, but you're connecting with an employee, right? Like you're building trust, you're building a relationship. And I think then that enhances your collaboration. So we try and foster a lot of places that people can connect. It could be the intramural kickball team, right? It could be the hula hoop contest that we had. It could be, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be like we do these free lunches on Tuesday and you're just standing in a line waiting for your food, but you're connecting with the people you may not know or work with. And so then when you go to work with them, right, there's this familiarity, there's this connection, there's this trust that you start to build up. And I think that really helps build these collaborative teams that become high functioning teams. The other thing I think that we really try and impress upon our employees is feedback. And they always say, they always hear me say, feedback is a gift. They're like, is it, Sandy? Like, I want to give that gift back, right? Um, but really having a culture of feedback so that they can be honest and authentic with each other. And if something's not going right, they can speak up, feel like they're heard. And so we really focus a lot on that. And I just think that helps keep teams high functioning, even in very stressful situations, right? So I think those are some of the things that we kind of focus on to help with that.
Yeah, and it seems like they're not mutually exclusive because in order to give feedback, which means, that helps with innovation and productivity. And at the end of the day, at least, it helps with the bottom line. I mean, profitability. But in order to be able to give feedback, it seems like you need to feel safe. And if people feel that sense of connection, I think that that would help foster that feeling of safety to speak up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then is there anything else that you would share as far as creating a sustainable high performing teams, and what's different than creating a high performing team during a period of growth versus I mean, there's so many companies, it seems like, that are kind of in disruption right now, and they're just kind of pedaling very hard to stay above water rather than really growing. And so I would imagine that there's a difference.
Um, so I think where we try and focus is as we with our culture, so we have the connection, we have the development. So we're developing our people constantly and developing them at all levels. So we might have a VP roundtable where we focus on this. We might have any manager of people go through, training on how to be a good manager. We have like what we call our Moxie values, right? So that everybody's kind of on the same sheet in terms of, the rules of kind of navigating our business. I think that's helpful when you have the same rule book and everything's kind of based on those values. So I think that is helpful. I think that going back to development too of teams, growth is exciting. Growth can be stressful, right? And so I think as long as people, again, go back to understanding like this is an opportunity, right? Like you don't always get to be part of a growth company. You don't always get to be part of a team that's working on a really cool, hard thing, right? And so it's not, shifting your mindset to this is hard, this is a lot of work, or this is extra work, and to really that developmental mindset of, oh my gosh, I might be this place in my career and I get to work on this thing that's going to have this huge impact on the company. And so that mind shift too. But looking at it as a development, like we're developing you in your career, we're developing you technically, but like these projects or these things are an opportunity to really like just be creative and, show like your moxie, like we call it moxie value, show your moxie, right? Like, and people don't always get picked to be on teams. So if you're on a team doing that, like it's really, you should look at it like it's just a really exciting opportunity for that and exposure, right, to the business.
Mm-hmm. To really take advantage of it, even if you're a little bit uncomfortable.
Right. Uncomfortable is kind of good, right? Like if you've been there, done that, it's not that exciting.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, we'll pull teams together, we call them SWAT teams, of people that have no idea of a product or how to do something, but then you're getting a lot of innovation, right? You're getting a lot of creativity. I think the other thing that's really important in these high performing teams too is not being afraid to fail or failing fast and recovering, right? And you can't you can't be innovative if you're afraid to take risks or if you feel like you're on a team and the business is going to be upset if it just doesn't work, right? You have to have a culture where people are they'll take the risk, and if it doesn't work they'll pivot, right? They'll figure out something else. But that really inspires creativity, and that really inspires people to be innovative, and that's what we're looking for. Like that's what any company's looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. And I would think that there is value even when people innovate and it's wrong or it is, it fails, because then you're getting closer to what's right. I mean, it seems like there's value in that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those listening, what would be either for an individual, well, actually, I have a two-sided question for you. For an individual, how could, in your opinion, they become more high performing? What can they take on themselves to kind of commit to be more high performing if they're in a situation where company's growing quickly? And then also for leaders, how have you been able to establish this culture?
Um, so let me do the second part first. The beauty of Aspida is we were a startup. So we got to create the culture we wanted. It's hard to go into a company and be like, we're going to change this culture. That's so hard. So really being clear on our values and what we wanted, that was really an important first step. So I think that um, creating the culture was kind of based on that. I think continuing to evolve with the culture is really listening, um, not being afraid to shift or grow as trends or things change. We have 80% of our employees are millennial and Gen Z. That comes with certain like feedback to us, right? And so we create around some of that, and that might shift, and we'll have to shift with it. So I think one of the things we do really well, and I think companies that do this can successfully navigate their culture, is really listening and listening to learn. And we do a lot of skip level meetings. We do a lot of engagement surveys. We do a lot of focus groups. So we really kind of keep the pulse on the organization. And so when they say like, well, we don't really like this, or, we can go, well, that's the way it is. Or we can go, okay, that's interesting. Let's explore this opportunity for this. So it's just a good way to really, and as you grow, that gets harder, right? We're 200 people, right? That's a little easier than 5,000 people.
Mhm.
But we're very intentional about our culture, and we recruit on it, we reward on it, we develop on it, right? And we exit people as necessary. So again, very intentional about it. So now you got to repeat the first part of the question
Yeah.
because I answered that second part.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will repeat it, but I really love what you said because it really seems like you have to come at it at all angles. So you were saying you recruit on it's very prolific in all different aspects. So it seems like consistency is important. So what I was asking about high performing teams during growth is you were speaking to how an organization can create it. But then I was also wondering, and this can be true for anyone, regardless of the size of their company, but how can individuals take personal responsibility for being high performers, especially when they're in growth? And of course, being a high performance coach, I have my ideas, but I want to hear from you because I do not have your area of expertise. So I'm excited to hear from you about this.
Um, so I think it's like, I feel like it's several things. I think the first thing people need to understand to kind of navigate any culture, any team is really understanding themselves, right? So knowing what their strengths, their weaknesses, their, what's important to them, what they value. And I think understanding yourself. Then I think you got to understand the workplace in which you work. So we talked about the culture, um, understanding like the network. Do you have your board of directors that, you not the board, but like your personal board of directors that, you go to for advice and feedback and coaching? And are you accepting of feedback? Do you understand your perception in the organization? Like how people perceive you, right? Are you proactive with that? Do you continue to develop yourself? Do you continue to learn and grow? And then like all of that, if I think about that as a house, right? The foundation of the know yourself, and then kind of the house piece as the understanding the business. The roof is kind of like the exposure piece. Like, do are you marketing yourself? Are you like, do people know you? Are you getting the right exposure? And I have General Electric DNA. And so like Jack Welch always used to say, like, build something, fix something, and then be visible along the way. And that visibility is really important. So that's how I kind of think about it, like a little bit of a house.
That is so important. And I love that because you can remember it, you know, and, and anyways, and so I get that example, but can you further break it down? Like I'm thinking about it through my coaching lens, and as far as thinking about so how would we do that? Like where to start?
As as an employee, where to start in
Yeah.
terms of um your own personal, like where you fit.
Well, where you fit, but also what you can do, like to self-reflect. Like, in other words, if you were going to add a module to your Spark program, you know,
Oh,
on on how to be a sustainable or how to be a high performer during periods of growth, how to be like what is a based on what you know, maybe where some of the gaps are,
got it. Okay.
might be like the first step.
So I would first of all say own your career. Like you've got to own your career. You've got to um almost think about it as a job too, right? Like using my kind of house example, like do you really know what's important to you and what your strengths are, and do you leverage those? And so being more detailed about that is like, okay, go do strengths finders, go do disc assessment, like, and so what that helps you do is go, okay, how do I relate to this boss or this coworker or this teammate so that I can influence them correctly, or I understand where they're coming from? And then am I setting myself up with the right um support around me? And so I talked a little bit about the board of directors, like, okay, so do I have that person, that sponsor in the room when I'm not there, that's going to say, hey, you should put Sandy on that project because she's really good at this, right? Do I have someone that I can leverage to be my sponsor? Do I have someone that's my like truth teller, right? The person that's going to be like, look, Sandy, suck it up, right? Like I hear you complaining about that, but you know what? Like put your big girl pants on, get back in there, get back to work, and then, the person you go vent to, whoever, whatever your board of directors is for you could be, your mentor. But are you surrounding yourself with a support structure that's also giving you feedback, real life, honest to goodness feedback? And are you accepting that feedback for what it is? Again, go back to the feedback as a gift. Like, are you really accepting that? I think, that's really important. And then are you being open to hearing what other, the feedback that you have on your work, on your career? And so I think it boils down to just really like, you own it. I think in today's world a little bit, I think people look to their manager like, well, my manager's not having career conversations with me, or my manager's not telling me about how I did on this team. And I always tell people to flip it. Like, are you asking your manager? Or are you going to your team and saying, how is my contribution? Like, what can I do differently? Like, how are you flipping that script to really own your career, really own how you show up, and understanding how people see you?
So what I'm hearing is maybe evaluating and having an honest look at our proactivity.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I'm not saying people are lazy about their career. I just don't think people are feel empowered by it. And I feel like that's what we need to, especially for early career women, right? To be empowered by that, and to know that you have every like ability to own it and drive it and be proactive with it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love that so much. And I think in a sense, like most of us can be a little bit more proactive in one way or the other. So rather than waiting for feedback or waiting to be asked if we have an idea, or just being a little bit more proactive. I love that so much. So if you are going to leave all the listeners with a final thought, what would that be?
I think you go back to own your career,
Mhm.
own it, drive it, and have the growth mindset versus the versus the promotion mindset, and it will fall into place. It might take a while, right? Like,
Mhm.
a year or two out of school, you're not going to become the, CEO, but things will fall into place when you're just doing great things. It will get noticed. It will happen. And I feel like I've peaked in my 50s. So like, I'm not saying wait that long. I'm just saying like, it'll happen. Just really be proactive and own it.
Yeah. So you heard it from Sandy, own your career, have a growth mindset rather than a promotion mindset. And it sounds like to have a little bit of faith along the way. And Sandy, to your continued success, I can't wait to keep following your journey. And I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.